Hey everybody, we are the Video Store Junkies and we are back once again, but this time we are back with a very special presentation for you. Over Labor Day weekend, our friend Bill Mulligan was at DragonCon and he did a presentation of horror movies that were never made. And Bill generously offered to give his presentation once again for all of us, and we hope you enjoy it.
Absolutely. So I want to thank Derek from the from DragonCon, who allowed me to present this, gave me a solo outing. And of course, I promptly blew it by making one that has 259 slides, which is more than you could possibly hope to get through in an hour. And I didn't even come close to getting through it all. So I'll talk fast, but feel free to interrupt. I trust you guys will, if any interruptions you have, will be worthy. So you're on notice. So yes, this is Unseen Horrors. I am Bill Mulligan, author of the recent book Realm, published by Falstaff Books. It is available on Amazon, and if you ever see me at a convention, I'll be glad to sell it to you for $10 and sign it.
Wait a minute, you charged me $20. Okay.
Guys, I'm talking to the general audience who has never given me any reason to, piss me off. So normally when we do this, and Derek has allowed me to do these solo outings, and what I like to do is try to maybe show some lesser seen films, get a little love, something that you can take home and share with the whole family. And but this is not one of those. I'm sorry to say. You have to set your expectations a little bit low. There's going to be some unhappiness. This presentation, this is the dropped ice cream cones of film. These are the ones that we will never get to see. At least not in this world, maybe in another better world. And we start with the person who really got me into fantasy film, and that's Ray Harryhausen. And if you don't know who Ray Harryhausen is, there's really no hope for you. I mean, come on, the man was a genius. He made these little articulated puppets move, and he was just absolutely fantastic. He has a wonderful body of work that he left behind. Ray Harryhausen was luckier than most special effects people because he hooked up with a producer, Charles Schneer, who was able to actually get the movies made, compared to people like Willis O'Brien, his mentor, and others who just spent their whole careers going to one failed project after another. And so Ray made most of his things, but there are a few that did not quite get it. And one of them was The Elementals, which is a really cool idea about these flying bat creatures that land in, I think it was Italy, and stuff happens. The important thing is Ray wanted a trip to Italy, and he could use this. He could use this as an excuse. I got to go there and shoot background plates. And they're like, yeah, whatever. And he would get a free trip to Italy and do all this. But it didn't fly. So he actually shot some early footage. That's actually Ray fighting his own creation. He went bald at the age of 12.
I can sympathize.
Yeah.
Oh my
So is this why you didn't finish it? Because you got carried off? Is that?
Yeah, that was it. He wanted to finish the film, but there's no way it was going to work without the animator. I think he ended up actually making 20 Million Miles to Earth. So he still got a trip to Rome out of it. I would have liked to have seen the Elementals. It's a cool thing. And Ray really did know how to make flying creatures look pretty good, and you couldn't see the wires and all. But this is one of the things. For every film that didn't get made, something else often did get made. And if we got the Elementals, we might not have gotten 20 Million Miles to Earth. Something's got to give. So there's that to keep in mind. Next one's a weird project. It's called Skin and Bones, and it's about a photographer who accidentally invents a new lens that allows, first his clothes become invisible, then his flesh becomes invisible. And wacky hijinks ensue, because look at it, it's kind of funny. Even funnier, he wanted Woody Allen to play the photographer. So this would have been something really unusual. A Ray Harryhausen movie.
In early 60s Woody Allen, is that?
I think so. Yeah, early 60s kind of thing. And this would really be Ray, for once, being kind of a supporting player. Yeah, the skeleton effects and everything would be cool, but that would not be the main thrust of the film, as it were. But he tried to get this made, and there just wasn't any interest in it. But he did all this art. He was a really good artist. He could draw some cool stuff. So the one neat thing, there's a book out now about the lost films of Harryhausen, which I actually showed earlier. And there's a lot of stuff to show for it, which is unusual for this sort of thing. Food of the Gods. So,
Yay!
Here's what I don't understand. If you've ever read Food of the Gods, it's about the scientists. They invent this thing, this food that makes things grow. And they give it to chickens, and you get a scene of these chickens taken over, and rats and all sorts of stuff. And then the second half of the book is they start giving it to humans, and it becomes this really kick-ass science fiction story about these giants that go to war with the normal-sized people. And it's really kind of cool. And they've adapted this movie several times, and they've never even come close to getting it right. For some reason, the only part that everyone seems to agree with is they want to have giant chickens. And I'm sorry.
Well, there was the one with the giant Beau Bridges in it. Remember?
Yeah, Valley of the Giants. Yeah. Not one of the better ones.
No, but it does have a giant Beau Bridges.
It does have a giant Beau Bridges. And giant chickens. Chickens are not scary. I will say, though, Ray's chickens look genuinely pissed off. I mean, look at the expression on their face. They're not happy. Like they know what our intentions were, and they're having none of it. But in real life, if you see down the bottom here, this is the picture from Food of the Gods, the Burt Gordon movie. Chickens, much like rabbits, it doesn't matter if you make them look bigger and smear blood on their little beaks. They're chickens. They're not intimidating. There's nothing scary about them. It's just... So he really wanted to do Food of the Gods, but I have a feeling, among other reasons, all the terrible adaptations of Food of the Gods probably scared off anyone's desire to see that happen. I'd still like to see like a miniseries or something based on that. It's just one of those H.G. Wells stories that never gets any love. So there was one more that I really think would have been cool, Force of the Trojans, which was going to be, I think, the follow-up to Clash of the Titans. Trojan prince battles for revenge after his wife is killed in the Battle of Troy. With plenty of creatures in his path, his journey leads to the founding of Rome, including a trip to the underworld. So we're just throwing all the mythology at this. Pretty much every mythical monster that hasn't been used yet. From the Odyssey, and then I don't know what one this is from, but he's pretty cool looking. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, that's sweet. I like that one.
Yeah. I mean, look, this is some cool stuff. Why didn't it get made? Here's the thing. I think Ray was pretty smart and saw the writing on the wall. Clash of the Titans made money. It was actually his most successful film, but it was also his most expensive film. And it came out right about the time Star Wars and other stuff. A new thing was coming. And Ray was way past retirement age, and I think just took the opportunity to say, I'm going to go out on top. And did. Plus, I think he injured his hand while he was working on Clash of the Titans. That was a difficult project. And just I think it would have been cool to make this. Every now and then they talk about bringing this one back, using stop motion and CGI to meld the two together. If Ray had been a younger man, I think he really probably would have embraced some of the more current technology and ran with it. But, it's one of those things, maybe it's for the best. And at least he lived long enough to be celebrated. I mean, he died knowing just how much people loved his stuff. But there's one I really do miss, and that was Ray Harryhausen's War of the Worlds. It was going to be a stop motion, the tripods, sort of a combination of his Earth versus the Flying Saucers with the tripods, a period piece. I just love the idea of being able to see stop motion tripods fighting Thunderchild and all that. He really put a lot into this. Now, the one part, lots of cool art and everything, the one part I think needed to be rethought were the actual Martians. Because they're supposed to be kind of scary, but they look kind of cute. He did a sample animation to show the death of the Martians at the very end.
Oh, it is a little too cute. Oh, he's wiping his head.
No. Oh, no.
Oh.
Yeah, the eyes are way
man.
too big. Oh.
We can travel.
Yeah, is that what it is,
that.
Renee? The
I think
eyes?
so. He's got like little Disney eyes.
Yeah. I mean, how stupid do you have to be, though? You're an alien. You figured out how to travel from Mars to Earth with all that equipment and everything, and you didn't think to maybe sample the air, maybe get a vaccine or something? But they're still smart. They're still smarter than the aliens from Signs. You know, oh, water kills us. Let's go to Earth.
I was thinking of that movie.
Yeah.
I was like, well, don't get me started on Signs.
Earth, planet of water. You know, if there's a planet of acid, I'm not landing on it, at least not without a spacesuit. So I would rate all these films on a scale of, you know, half a dropped ice cream cone to 4. I give these the full 4 dropped ice cream cones. We really lost a lot not getting those. Now, the War of the Worlds one, he shopped that around, and everyone said, this is a great idea, and then they went and made War of the Worlds without him. And that's basically what happened to Willis O'Brien, his mentor who did King Kong. He would come up with these great ideas, shop them around, and then other people would take it and do it cheaper.
Jerks.
So Ray was very lucky to come across a producer that, you know, believed in him, and they were partners. You know, that man deserves a lot of credit too. Charles Schneer. Peter Jackson. So Peter Jackson, you might have heard of him. He did the very popular Dead Alive and The Frighteners, very underrated. He did the remake of King Kong. And he did what he's probably best known for, Meet the Feeples. And I don't know, then sort of faded away, and I don't know what happened to him. Probably going out, making some little obscure art flicks. But he had a chance to do something. He had an idea, and darned if it wasn't a good one, because he really thought that he had the idea that could bring back Freddy. Because Freddy had fallen on hard times. You know, they'd gotten a little stale. They weren't scary anymore. He was just quippy and everything. And his idea, and I think it was a great one, was that the teenagers of Springwood are no longer frightened by Freddy, and they take sleeping pills so they can go into the dream world and bitch slap him around. Just bully him. Krueger can't do anything about it. But eventually one of them slips up and he kills a kid, and that gives him his powers back. And then he traps a police officer, and the son has got to go in there now and save him from Freddy.
I like it.
I like it too.
I like this premise because it makes Freddy more of a hero, because I hate teenagers and I automatically
there you go.
And
there you are.
Yeah, it's a good setup.
And you know, and you'd be like, would kids really do that? And then just look at the news.
Yeah.
Just, you know, see what the latest TikTok challenge is, and that people, you know, die doing it. And you're like, of course they would go there and pick on Freddy. That's brilliant. I'm going to give that 3 ice cream cones.
The Freddy challenge.
It got rejected, and instead they went with Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
And you can find out all of our thoughts on that if you go listen to our ranking the Nightmare on Elm Street series from last year.
That's right. Definitely worth a look. So that was a missed opportunity. And, of course, he went on to do bigger and better things and probably wouldn't blow his nose on a Freddy movie at this point. Although, who knows?
He ended up doing the Hobbit movies, too, so...
Well, yeah.
Speaking of blowing his nose on something.
They probably weren't going to, yeah. So, Alien. Alien comes out, one of the greatest science fiction horror movies ever made. How can it be topped? Aliens comes out, one of the greatest science fiction action films ever made. They're 2 for 2, and you're like, what can we do to top this? And the obvious answer came. Let's put Cameron Diaz's lips on the alien. Yes, those are her lips. I mean, I think they took a cast or something. They didn't actually tear her lips off or whatever. But yeah, so this...
That'd be cooler if they did.
That would be. This was for Alien 3. And Alien 3, I got to say, this is a really cool design. And strangely attractive. I mean, I'm not saying I'd kiss her, but...
You remember that sculpture of Britney Spears?
Ooh.
Remember that sculpture?
That's terrifying. Yeah.
Kinda
did that also have a pointy prehensile tail?
I think she did.
No, but...
Alien 3, you could just do a whole presentation on the Alien 3s that we never got to see. No one could figure out what to do. And there were a few problems. Sigourney Weaver was kind of loosey-goosey on whether or not she was going to come back. And that does influence how you write your script. So they decided to roll the dice and go for someone who hadn't done a script before, William Gibson. If you don't know who he is, you're obviously not a science fiction fan. Yeah, this guy's pretty influential. Neuromancer, just one of the most influential science fiction movies ever made, science fiction books ever written. And a lot of cool stuff, not much of which has really translated well into cinema, because books don't necessarily have to be movies. But they hired him, and he was like, sure. He wasn't really like super enthusiastic, but I suspect they paid him a truckload of money. And so here was his premise. It's basically Hicks and Bishop. This is a direct sequel to Aliens, battling genetically altered xenomorphs aboard an enormous space station. Ripley is in a coma, and she will remain in the coma unless Sigourney Weaver decides to sign on, in which case she shows up in the third act with a startling recovery. That was a pretty good, clever idea. It's like they're going to dangle this. It's like, we don't need you. We'd like to have you, but, maybe you shouldn't sign. Keep in mind, these people, she was supposed to get a cut of the net of these movies. And I don't think I'm going to surprise any of you when I tell you there has never been a net. These movies have all lost money. They keep making them in the hope that maybe one day, perchance, they'll make a profit. But alas, that day has never come. So she never got that thing. She ended up suing him. I don't know what she won. I mean, they're all criminals. The xenomorphs in this movie were grown from some of the residue that was left on Bishop, and they're being turned into bioweapons, which I think is ironic because I always felt the xenomorphs were bioweapons, just not from us. So we decide to do that, to take these incredibly hard to control bioweapons and turn them into even more dangerous, hard to control bioweapons. And I hope, spoiler alert, it doesn't go well. Including, I thought, a really cool idea, which is this airborne xenomorph infection. You're minding your own business, and all of a sudden, they just come exploding out of you. You've turned into it, and your skin and bones just go shattering, and there you are. And it's pretty cool. I've read the script, and you always got to keep in mind scripts are pretty dry. Even if you're someone like Gibson, they kind of expect you to write just the facts. They never read as well, even good scripts. They never read as well as the finished product because they're kind of designed to be that way. So all that said, I still give this 3.5 ice cream cones because it. And most importantly, at least 2 of these ice cream cones are because this would have replaced Alien 3. And I know it's got its defenders, but I'm not one of them. I don't like Alien 3 at all. The fact that it opens with the death of Newt. Yeah, no, sorry. You might as well kill the cat, too, while you're at it, because I hate you. I absolutely hate you at that point.
Right.
Yeah, so I would rather have seen this one. And it has had a life of its own. As you saw, it was a comic book. They made a comic book out of it. They've made a book out of it. There's been a whole bunch of stuff of this script that just, they were kind of like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. And they tried a bunch of stuff. There's a lot of weird ideas for Alien 3. And then they finally went with the one they did. I just feel like they were running out of time. Like, okay, we got to shoot something. What's the latest one? Okay, go with it. That, like I say, it's got its defenders. Hey,
that's actually exactly what happened. If you read some of the background on that movie, like it's insane. Like they put out because sorry, I know you want to move on here. But
no.
Like, there was a theatrical trailer which promised an Alien 3 set on Earth. It even had the tagline "On Earth, everyone can hear you scream." They put out a theatrical. They had no script. This was not a film that they were making. This was not a film that I think they. I don't even know if they had a final script for it, but they put a theatrical trailer out that promised that, and then ended up making a completely different movie. So that's
right.
There you could do a whole. Actually, hey, you could do a whole presentation just on the development of Alien 3. But yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy, and actually considering the mess that pre-production was, the movie's probably is better than it should have been. Than you could reasonably expect.
Honestly, kind of shocking that David Fincher ever worked again after that.
Yeah.
But I guess it's a good thing that he crawled his way out of that pit.
Right. And maybe people understood it's like no one could have made it work. They're just all the cards were stacked against them in that. But Hollywood's usually not that forgiving no matter what. So let's go back in time. The Wolfman versus Dracula. Yeah, in Technicolor. See, that's a big deal because none of the Universal monster movies, except for Phantom of the Opera, were in Technicolor. They started making Son of Frankenstein in Technicolor, and then they decided not to. But we still have a couple of old photos of that, and that's where you can see the monster was actually green because that showed up. That looked pretty cool. That was the color they used in the black and white to make it look the right kind of pale color. In Technicolor, it looks pretty goofy. And so they decided to just go with regular stuff. But they were going to do Technicolor. Color was in. This was going to originally be Lon Chaney Jr. playing both roles. Until it was explained that that's really a stupid idea. Because a lot of this movie is the Wolfman arguing with Dracula. And both of them are pretending to be someone else. I've read the script. It's talky. It doesn't... The Wolfman's okay. But Dracula is pretending to be someone else. He's hitting on the daughter of a gravedigger. And that's the daughter that the Wolfman falls in love with. A lot of yapping until finally at the end. And, this could have been good. Because then they said, hey, who else could play Dracula? Wait a minute, Bela Lugosi's still alive. And that pretty much sums up the career of Bela Lugosi, that every time they're making these Dracula stuff and everything, they seem to forget that they have the original. He was there. He was alive. Why are they not immediately casting him in this? That would have been fun. It was actually fun watching him fight the werewolf in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. But there's part of the problem. If I got a Dracula versus the werewolf, I'm expecting something like this, like a Frank Frazetta. I mean, they're just kicking ass and everything. The final fight in the Wolfman versus Dracula is that Dracula turns into a giant bat. So we don't really get that fight. We get that last little scene of Abbott and Costello Meets Frankenstein where Dracula turns into a bat, flies off the banister, gets grabbed by the Wolfman, and they both plummet to their deaths. Womp, womp, womp. I don't know. Two ice cream cones. I don't think it would have been very good. I still would like to see it, but I think we didn't really miss much. Hey, Dracula's Daughter is really underrated, but it would have been a classic if they'd gone with the original idea. It was going to be directed by James Whale, so already you got good. It was going to have Bela Lugosi, Jane Wyatt as the daughter of Dracula, though I do like the actress they got for the actual one. And it opens in the 14th century. Dracula's army is, just tearing through the countryside. So he's kind of like Vlad the Impaler, kidnapping women. He finds one of them, proclaiming her his daughter, although it's kind of sketchy on exactly their relationship. He gets cursed with vampirism. And then we cut to the present. Dracula has been killed, and they go to his homeland where the Countess, the daughter, is still there. And Van Helsing has to come back and clean up the mess. It was a really big production. Like this would have been the Bride of Frankenstein of Dracula films. But here's the thing. The British censors, here's what they said. Dracula was ghoulish, weird, eerie, and every other adjective in the language that expresses horror. But Dracula's Daughter would require the resources of half a dozen more languages to adequately express its beastliness. I consider this absolutely unfit for exhibition as a film.
Wow.
They killed it.
Fuckers.
They killed it dead.
Fuckers.
Yes, they absolutely did. And then we came out with Dracula's Daughter, which is often hailed as the first lesbian vampire. You gotta really look for some subtext. I mean, I don't know. Is she gay? Maybe. She looks like she might go to Lilith Fair, but I don't know.
I wish they had made that movie and the poster had just been that quote from the British Censor Board. They would have lined up around the block.
Yeah.
That's the best promotion you could possibly give to a
absolutely.
movie.
Yeah. So another Universal movie that they were working on was The Devil's Brood. And I want you to look at this cast of characters. The Wolfman, Frankenstein's monster. Look, they actually got it right. Frankenstein's monster, not Frankenstein. Mm-hmm. Dracula, the Hunchback, the Mad Doctor, the Invisible Man, the Wild Woman from Captive Wild Woman. They made 3 movies with Aquanada as the Ape Woman. No one remembers her. The Mummy and the Mad Ghoul, who was in the movie The Mad Ghoul. Nobody remembers the Mad Ghoul. He's just lucky to be there. Absolutely lucky.
He's the Hawkeye of the group.
100% the Hawkeye. So, surprisingly, they made this movie. But when they did, Yeah, it was just the Wolfman, Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, the Hunchback, and the Mad Doctor. The Ape Woman, the Mummy, and the Mad Ghoul pretty much just disappeared. And I think the Invisible Man did too, but I suppose it's possible he's still in the movie because, he's invisible. So House of Frankenstein. Now, House of Frankenstein, if you watch it, it's a mess. It's a real mess. This movie makes no sense. It's like these guys are just sort of wandering around, and they find Dracula, and they pull the stake out of his heart, and he comes back to life. And then some stuff happens, and he dies, and they get back in the wagon, they drive some more. Then they find the Frankenstein's monster. It's like, what the hell? This is so random. This movie is completely random. None of it really makes a lot of sense, but it does have a bunch of monsters in it. It just should have had more. It would have been an even bigger mess, but, more monsters would have been fun. At this point, they were kind of just hacking it out. I mean, it's not a great film.
I liked it better when it was the Mad Monster Party.
Yeah.
A better mashup there.
I'm giving this one, I think, House of Frankenstein is not one of my favorites, so anything that could have improved it would be better. And adding, 4 more monsters, 3 monsters and the Mad Ghoul, would be pretty cool. So, hey, what do you think? Huh?
Hey, that'll
Hellraiser meets Halloween.
Couldn't have been worse than what we got.
Well, let me sweeten the deal a little bit here. What if I told you that this was going to be written by Clive Barker himself?
Ooh.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, downgrade your expectations, because here's what he was thinking. Young Michael finds the Hellraiser box, and when he opens it up, he's possessed by the Lord of the Dead, whose name is Sam Hain. Yeah, is right. Clive Barker said he saw Michael as a sadomasochistic sexual pervert and serial killer, which would be enough to pique Pinhead's interest. Since Michael doesn't talk, there was a problem in how are these two going to interact, but apparently Michael's something of a freak, and that I don't know. Listen, I don't want to second guess Clive Barker, but I'm not getting good feels from this. Although I do like the title. Halloween's a good title. That's a good title.
Isn't that the title of an album?
Shut up. Yeah, probably. Come on. There's no good ideas. Okay. I'm giving that one 2. But as subpar.
I'm sorry, this is the name of a band. Yeah, I was like, that sounds familiar. There's a band called Halloween. Sorry.
I'll bet they're really good. As bad as that idea was, this is one of the worst ideas in the history of ideas. and no, I'm not joking. They were Candyman meets Leprechaun, probably into Hood or space. And Tony Todd put the kibosh on it. He's like, no. And I think we all owe Tony Todd a drink at the next convention I go to that Tony Todd is there. It's like, sir, this is for Candyman, and this is for the lack of Candyman meets Leprechaun.
I think you buy him the drink and then you get him to talk about this and see if he has any stories
and record it and it's just a terrible idea. But you know what would have been a good team up? This one. Jason.
That's something.
Yeah, Jason.
Yeah,
Freddy,
weren't they
and
working on
Ash.
that?
Well, yes, they were. And there were a few problems. Like, they don't actually own the rights to all the... No one person owns the rights to these 3 characters. So you've got that problem where you've got to get a bunch of these Hollywood greedheads to come together and agree on how to divvy up the profits. And they all, that's not going to work. But the other problem was that Bruce Campbell, who, picks and chooses his projects. I guess he doesn't feel obligated to have to be working 24/7. He was like, yeah, I like the idea, but of course, Ash has got to kill these guys. And they were like, whoa, no, you can't kill our characters. Like, what are you upset about? Like, you can't bring them back? They've died in almost every movie they've been in, and you brought them back. Let Ash kill them. What's wrong with you?
Both series have an installment with the word "final" in the title, and spoiler alert, it's not the final movie in the franchise.
It's pretty much in the middle, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was the thing, and it just fell apart. They did make it into a comic book, and it's predictably fun. I mean, yes, I would go see that. 4 ice cream cones, easy. Come on, that would just be fun. It almost writes itself. John Carpenter's involved with a lot of things that did not come to fruition. unfortunately. And the one that I really kind of like, or one of the ones, was Shadow Company, which is kind of... it has a screenplay by Shane Black and Fred Decker. Who did
wow.
The Predator and Monster Squad. So, pretty cool. And it starts in Saigon, where the Shadow Company is, these are soldiers that apparently have been turned into zombies. They're killed and buried, but it doesn't really take. And then it flashes 16 years later, their bodies are brought back to America, where they come back to life and bring the war home to those who betrayed it. Yeah, pretty good stuff. Lots of gushy action. Lots of, the soldiers just take out. This one has really kind of taken on a life of its own, where people just like the script and like the idea. There's all kinds of fan art, and the script is out there. It sounds like a lot of fun. I would have loved to have seen what Carpenter would have brought to it. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Death Dream and a little bit of They Live, kind of melded together into something pretty cool. I'll give it 3 ice cream cones.
Do you think it's one of those ones that, like, the blacklist films that somebody might actually make it, not Carpenter probably, but somebody else might make it at some point?
But I've made this observation before. Very few of the films on the blacklist, which are the great unproduced screenplays of every year, and everyone agrees they're great, very few of them ever get made. And there's a thing, Hollywood's got this thing, once a film loses momentum, they treat it as though it's cursed. They are the most superstitious dullards in Hollywood. If something goes wrong, they just treat it like this was a sign from the gods not to make this film. It's like, what are you talking about? The funding fell through. It was not the fault of the script. It was a good script then, it's a good script now. No, it's tainted. They're so terrified of losing money, and yet they do it so well, so consistently. I don't know. It seems like a no-brainer. Netflix is always looking for something to do, and they end up just making the same movie over and over again. Grab some of these scripts. Oh, but it was written in the 80s, and we can't relate. Good God, do you hear yourself talk, man? Oh, they're such idiots. The Blob.
So it's also the sort of... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that feels like one of those scripts that they could just update it. Like, it doesn't have to be Vietnam anymore. Like,
no.
Hey, guess, we have a new war every generation. You can set that in. So,
come on.
Update it and...
Yeah, it was in the Ukraine, okay? Yeah, now it's topical. It's great. The Blob. So we did, and you should any viewer should go back and listen to our wonderful podcast on the Blobs, all 3 Blob movies. We had The Blob, and the remake of The Blob was really good. We all agree. We really like that movie. But it didn't do well. And so someone decided to take a crack at it again, and that someone was Rob Zombie. Wanted to make his own Blob movie.
Did it star Sherry Moon Zombie as the Blob?
You must be psychic. Have I talked to you about this? Because indeed it did.
You're being punked.
And no, this is a real thing. And what's amazing is some of the production art came out, and it's like awesome. The cool concept they had here is that there is the Blob, the big blob, but the Blob is also able to send out little bloblets, little humanoid blob creatures that look more or less like humans or whatever they absorbed. And they go out and absorb more and then come back and bring it to the mother blob.
Oh my God, I love it.
Yeah, I love these are like Mars Attacks cards, they're great. It's just...
Was this he wrote the script for this, or he was just going to direct it?
Oh, I'm pretty sure both.
Okay. I
suspect. And sadly it fell into production hell. They came close, but the fact that no Blob movie has made any money since 1958, and this looks like it would have been one of the pricier ones of the bunch, probably held him back. I mean, but I think I love this one. So 3 ice cream cones. I would make it 4, but I'm not really sure if Rob Zombie's a good monster director. I like some of the stuff he's made, and I haven't liked some of the other stuff he's made, but hard to say. But I'll give it 3 and more than happy to bump it up to 4. Hey, I got an idea. You're going to like this idea. What if we took Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS, and had her fight Bruce Lee? Wait. Don't say anything, because did I forget to mention it takes place in the Bermuda Triangle?
Oh.
That's right. It's Ilsa meets Bruce Lee in The Devil's Triangle, the match of the century. It's your 1976-77 box office record breaker, available in the fall of 76. Sadly, fall of 76 has come and gone, and we have never seen this movie, despite the fact they're advertising this in like Variety. People,
I think this. I definitely do believe this would have been the biggest film of 76, 70. I can't think of another movie that came out in 1977 that would have eclipsed this at the box office.
Right. Now, one person who would not be able to actually enjoy this movie was Bruce Lee, because he was dead like 3 or 4 years by the time they were going to make this.
And they made a couple other movies with him after he died, right?
Well, they did. They did.
Get the mask from that they used in Game of Death, right?
Game of Death, sure.
Slap
Absolutely.
It on someone else's face.
I mean, tell you the truth, that's a movie I should have mentioned in this, because Game of Death, that what we see is just a tiny little fraction of what he filmed, and that stuff is available now, and it's really, really good. His concept of Game of Death was much better than what we got. That's faint praise, but you can actually, there's a documentary called Bruce Lee's Game of Death that has all that missing footage, and it's some of his best fight stuff. It was great.
Wait, so they cut a bunch of his actual footage and then still went with shots of someone wearing a Bruce Lee mask?
Yes.
Or whatever they did? Okay.
The only part they kept was him fighting Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And that was he was fighting his way up a pagoda, and at every stage there's a different martial artist who's using a different style of martial arts, and he and 2 other guys are matching themselves against this, and of course Bruce wins each and every one until he gets to the final 11, and that's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and that's the only part they kept. It was great because he really wanted to show a movie that would show his philosophy of fighting versus more standard ones. Anyway, we didn't get that, and we didn't get this. Diane Thorne, who was Ilsa, and seemed like a pretty nice lady. They interviewed her, and she said there never was a script. It was only discussed. She was told to study martial arts. They were trying to raise the money for it, and they were going to use an actor going by the name of Bruce Lee, L.I. He's in a lot of movies. Yeah. But it would have been fun, but it didn't happen. I can only imagine what this movie would have been about. Like, what happens? Did Bruce Lee disappear in the Bermuda Triangle? Why is there a shark?
I was just going to ask.
Who's this guy? Who's this zombie in the back holding up? I don't know. Is that really Ilsa? It doesn't really look like Ilsa. And Ilsa was the she-wolf of the SS. I mean, 1976, she's going to be looking a little long in the tooth. But then you realize the Ilsa movies, there's 4 of them. They don't make any continuity sense. First, she's the she-wolf of the SS. Then she's working for, like, the Soviets, Tigress of Siberia. And then somehow she ends up in Canada. I forget that one, whichever one it was. And then she's in a 4th movie. It isn't really an Ilsa movie. It's a Jess Franco movie, but they decided to retitle it Ilsa because it had the same actress, and it's terrible. So this movie would have been awful, just awful. But what a title. I mean, I'd be proud to have that on my wall, that poster. Okay, let's talk about Hammer. Hammer time. Hammer Film Productions. They were great. I love Hammer. But there's a lot of stuff they wanted to do that they never got to make. And this is one. So this is one of those ones where, I'm sorry it didn't get made. But if it had gotten made, there'd be another movie I love that didn't get made. Hammer wanted to do King Kong. And they wanted Ray Harryhausen to do the special effects. And if they couldn't get Ray Harryhausen, they're willing to have Jim Danforth, who's probably the 2nd best animator ever. If they couldn't get Jim Danforth, they'd get Dave Allen, who's probably the 3rd best, and actually built a Kong armature and did a little sample thing to show what it would look like. And that was later used in a Toyota commercial. You can find that on YouTube. It's great. I think this sculpture was by Harryhausen. He was just a talented guy.
I was going to say, my goodness.
Yeah, it's awesome. And the reason that it got put down, and it's so amazing to say this in the year 2023, but when they went to RKO and said, hey, we want to remake King Kong, they said, well, we have a policy, and that policy, one that should be engraved on the foreheads of every studio executive in Hollywood right now, like in Glorious Bastards. They should just carve this with a knife onto their heads. They said, we do not do remakes.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely wow. So So Hammer said, okay, I guess we can't do that. Hey, Ray, you got any other ideas? And he said, indeed I do. How about we put Raquel Welch in a bikini and we do 1 million years BC? Because 1 million years ago, well, there were no dinosaurs, but there were cavemen who probably didn't look anything like Raquel. It doesn't matter. We got this wonderful movie. It's a great movie. Everyone who's seen it loves it. And so, if we got the King Kong, then we wouldn't have gotten this. And what would it have been like? I don't know. I don't know how good a Hammer King Kong would have been. But 1 million years BC was pretty darn dope. Meanwhile, RKO apparently woke up from whatever drunk bender they were on one day and like, oh my God, did we just say no Hollywood remakes when we could have actually charged them money to make this? So we got Dino De Laurentiis, who gave them a bucket load of money and decided to make... I just, every time I had this poster on my wall. I love this poster. But look at the most exciting original motion picture event of all time. It's King Frickin' Kong. How do you call that the most original motion picture event of all time? I mean, and how big is he supposed to be? He's standing on both of the Twin Towers? But then, just to add insult to injury, if you haven't seen it, Dino De Laurentiis claimed that they built a 50-foot robot King Kong that was used throughout the movie. And if you're watching it, you're like, wow, I did not know that 1976 robot technology was this good. Because it wasn't. That's Rick Baker in a costume, and he's good. It's a good costume, and Rick Baker knows how to make a good ape costume, and he does great. The robot was used in exactly one scene, and you'll know it when you see it, because it looks like a Chuck E. Cheese reject. It can barely move. They spent $1 million on this disaster. On just the costume. They spent way more than that on the movie. That's the other disaster. It's terrible. It's just so terrible. But here's the thing that really hurts. Because this movie exists, we did not get The Legend of King Kong, which would have had, well, it would have been in Sense-Around. Hey, remember Sense-Around? No, you're too young.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul remembers. Sense-Around is they put these giant speakers in the theater, and they set the bass up real high. So during exciting scenes, it would vibrate through you. Like when you end up in a car lane next to that person who's playing their stereo so loud that your teeth are vibrating, and you can only wonder what's happening to their internal organs. Yeah, that's what Sense-Around was like. They used it in Earthquake and Roller Coaster, and then they realized this really isn't the kind of gimmick that we need for most of our movies. The Way We Were is not going to be improved by having Sense-Around show up every time Robert Redford kisses Barbara Streisand, although it would have gotten me there. So they were going to do it there. It was going to have stop motion animation by Jim Danforth. And Jim Danforth made a mess of really, really good behind the scenes paintings and proof of concept. It was going to have entirely new monsters.
Wow.
Look, yeah, really cool stuff and everything. Now, I've always considered this maybe the greatest unmade film of all time, but when I started digging into this rabbit hole, I start getting doubts. The more I read, the more I'm wondering what exactly was going on. There were massive lawsuits flying back and forth. Nobody knew who actually owned the rights to King Kong because of RKO's weird no remake strategy. But okay, you could do a sequel, but not a remake. And I'm like, what? What does that even mean? How could there be a sequel? He's dead, So first of all, who are they going to get to direct this? And they were looking at Dick Sargent. And Dick Sargent, he did the first Kojak film. He did The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, which is pretty darn good. Nightmares, which I don't recall seeing. I don't remember that one. He did one of my favorites, Colossus the Forbin Project, which for some reason is never streaming. Never streaming, even though this movie is more topical today than ever. So you're thinking, this guy can deliver. Yeah, let's hold on a sec here. He also did Jaws the Revenge.
Well,
Jaws the Revenge, I mean, everyone's allowed a bad movie, but Jaws the Revenge is like a legend. It's so bad. It's so misbegotten, and maybe it was work for hire, maybe they threw him on it. Obviously the shark didn't work, but the whole premise of it is so bad that it actually made a comedian Richard Jeni's career. He went on the Tonight Show and did a routine about Jaws the Revenge. Look it up on YouTube. He kills. It made his career because it's 100% accurate that this movie is so stupid. Watching it is like being slapped in the face by the film. So I don't know. Kind of a cool cast. Peter Falk is Carl Denham. I like that. Robert Redford is Jack Driscoll. Yeah, they're going to have some pretty boy doing that. Susan Blakely is Ann Darrow. I'm okay with all of these. And like I said, there was a lot of really cool behind-the-scenes stuff. But then I found this. And I don't know what this means.
Oh my goodness.
This is the flashback to Baby Kong, obviously.
Oh my goodness.
Is it?
They couldn't even afford a full-size gorilla suit.
So cute.
I'm thinking maybe the premise was it's like, damn, we're going to have to build these sets. Hey, wait, I got an idea. What if we had like a little person in the King Kong suit? Then we wouldn't have to make the sets so big. We could make them smaller. Yeah, but all I could find was this. No explanation. Whoa, what is this from? What were they thinking? Is this really where they were going with it? But it gets worse because apparently in all this movie was in absolute production hell because they were trying to rush it so they could beat Daniel De Laurentiis to the screen. That wasn't going to happen.
Also, I would like to point out that this picture is the origin of the dab, so it is still notable.
So we did indeed. At some point, they started saying, "What if their Kong's going to look like a gorilla? Sure, but what if our Kong was more of like a primitive man?" And Danforth was like, "Well, okay, you mean something like this?" And they were like, "Yeah, something like that." Is right. No. Just this guy's got no cerebellum. This is really alarming.
Oh no.
No. We don't talk about this one. No.
No ice cream.
Way too long for the De Laurentiis one.
Yeah, I know. You start thinking maybe Dino De Laurentiis. So, okay, I don't know what to say about that one. I have no idea whether we dodged a bullet or we got away with murder. Or what? I don't know. Maybe, who knows? At any rate, they just basically agreed that Dino De Laurentiis would make his movie, and then Universal would make theirs after his made a bucket load of money, but it didn't make a bucket load of money, so they decided not to make it, and that was the end of that. Maybe it was for the best. Mm-hmm. Hey, did you ever see this one?
Ooh.
Yeah, what a great movie.
Looks familiar.
What a great movie. And I just want to single out for, someone who really should have been nominated for Best Supporting Actor, Jed the dog.
Yes.
That dog is great. I thought for the longest time that most of the scenes with Jed were really good animatronic because that dog, he was emoting. He was really giving it his all. Like, he spent hours highlighting parts of the script and thinking hard about what his motivations would be. He put way more in there than just about any actor. And this is before CGI, obviously. So look at that pissed off expression on his face. Like, yeah, he was great. He was great in this movie. I would watch a Jed movie. If they were going to make a prequel and it focused just on Jed, I would have been the happiest man alive. Instead, they made The Thing. You probably don't remember this one. It's amazing to me that no one remembers this movie. It's not even that old. But it just slipped right through the cracks, and everyone was in no hurry to uncrack it. It just failed. Absolutely failed. And one of the reasons it failed is that they said, you know what is it that made Carpenter's movie so great? Well, it was directed by John Carpenter, and they weren't about to do that. But the other thing was that it was practical effects. It's probably one of the greatest examples of practical effects that's ever been put on there. So they were like, by God, we're going to do that too. And they fully intended to do that. They built these amazing practical effects things. So there's all this footage that they shot, test footage.
Oh my goodness.
And then at the last minute, they basically said, nah, we're going to go with CGI because we can do so much more with that. And that's what the kids like these days is CGI.
Oh, no.
So they did, and the movie is completely forgotten. And would it have succeeded with this? I can't say that it would have. Maybe that's just me, the geek, going for all the cool practical stuff. But I really do think it would have helped. There were some other problems with it. The whole premise, the fact that it's a prequel, we know how it ends, and yeah, that's got some problems there. When you think about people who have announced a lot of movies that have never actually come through with them, The first name that you come up with is Guillermo del Toro. But in a close second place is Quentin Tarantino. And he's got a bunch. He's one of these guys that just loves to talk around and, takes his shoes off, makes you take your shoes off, and then starts over some beer and pizza, starts talking about what he's going to do next. And sometimes they're really kind of crazy. Like he wanted to do Lucio Fulci's lesser known and probably the least Lucio Fulci movie you'll ever see, The Psychic. And I'm always amazed by Tarantino that he really gravitates toward not the movies I would have thought. Like, I love Giallo. Oh, so do I, Quentin Tarantino. What's your favorite? And then he'll pick something super obscure that I've never heard of. And I watch it. I'm like, okay, yeah, it's fine example of Giallo, but it's not in the top 20. But for whatever, it attracted to him. And listen, he's a strange guy, but he is a genius. And I love his movies. I mean, if you tell me, hey, there's a film coming out and it's by... If you give me a list of names, the one I'm thinking, this is probably the one I'm going to enjoy the most will be the one that Tarantino does. He has never actually let me down. I don't know about that one. He also, Grindhouse. So, this ticks me off. He was going to do Grindhouse 2, and it was going to include some of the movies that were the trailers. So like Edgar Wright was going to do Don't, which is a really creepy trailer, and totally captured that Euro trash vibe. I got to say, Grindhouse is one of the most heartbreaking cinematic experiences of my life. This was me watching Grindhouse. This was me at the halfway mark when everyone got up and left after the first movie. And I'm like, wait, stop. Like a crazy man. I'm jumping out of my seat. There's a whole other movie coming. And they're looking at me with alarm. Like, did you not look at the poster? Have you not read a review? Do you people just like show up at the theater and just blithely live your lives and not care about the whole premise of this? I'm explaining what a grindhouse is to them, and they're fleeing, now they're running and calling for security. Oh my God, I hate these people. These are the same people that at the end of every Marvel movie walk out during the credits and then come running back in because they hear the rest of us cheering. And they're like, what did I miss? What did I miss? And you just want to lie to them and just come up with like the best thing ever. Oh, dude, you missed it. Oh, yeah. Ant-Man. Okay, Ant-Man's fiddling with some stuff. And all of a sudden, the Silver Surfer showed up. And you know who else is on his board, his silver board? Batman. It's a crossover. They're crossing over Batman and the Silver Surfer in the Marvel Universe. And you missed it, dude. That's what I want to do. Yeah. So nobody went to see Grindhouse, and it bombed. It's like probably Tarantino's least successful film. So we're never going to get Grindhouse 2. Another one he wanted to do, and again, so Tarantino, he's got like the whole Marvel universe to choose from, and he wants to do Luke Cage, Power Man, with Lawrence Fishburne. And I'm like, okay, that's an interesting choice. And he went to them. I think he even wrote a script. He wrote the script. And he went and showed it to him. Now, this was Quentin Tarantino, like lowercase. This was maybe right after Reservoir Dogs. He wasn't, he wasn't the superstar. And they were like, no, I don't get it. No. They later...
They're like, Quentin, we can't put that many N-words in a Marvel film.
That's oh my God, you're absolutely right.
It's got to be rated PG-13.
I think he also wrote a Silver Surfer script. And they didn't go for that one either.
Yeah, and they were like, Quentin, once again, we cannot put that many N-words in a Silver Surfer movie.
Right.
Cut back.
What's funny is right about this time, Silver Surfer has always been a big favorite of people who want to make movies that are just never going to get made. Check this out. This is an early thing done by a bunch of special effects people who wanted to show a proof of concept that you could actually make a Silver Surfer movie. This is like some of the oldest CGI you will ever see. No, It's not great. I'm not going to pretend it is, but for the time it was made, this was absolutely amazing. Mm-hmm. So these guys,
when is this from?
And this is just some special effects people stealing money. And
like when was this made?
Okay, right around the time of Terminator, because look, he just took the Terminator doll and turned it into.
So it was like circa 1991.
Yeah, because the Terminator 2 showed. Yeah, exactly, and then he goes off to other adventures, turning action figures into other action figures, and so they showed this around, and they got massive amounts of attention. They were being invited to all kinds of lunches and parties and everything else. And at some point, they realized no one had any interest whatsoever in actually making this film, but they did like to look at it, and there you go, another. So the Silver Surfer's got a weird history. They actually wanted to make it back way early. Like, when did Xanadu come out? I'm thinking this was in the 70s.
Like 84?
Really? That late?
Or is that earlier? Or is that 78?
Yeah, I'm thinking 78. It sounds like something my then girlfriend in high school would have been trying to drag me to go see. Okay, so Olivia Newton-John's boyfriend
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, okay. Her boyfriend / manager wanted to take the Silver Surfer graphic novel, the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby graphic novel, which is actually pretty good. It's a standalone. It's not really set in the Marvel universe. It's like a separate thing entirely. Turn that into a movie. He spent a good bit of coin doing some what I think are pretty sharp looking proof of concept ideas using a bodybuilder spray painted silver.
Oh, okay.
He wanted to get Paul McCarthy to do the soundtrack.
Wow.
And here's where things start falling apart, because when they're describing it, they're trying to sell this to you. Like, here's what we're going to do, and you're going to get excited when you hear what we want to do. And one of the ideas was his theme was going to be 1,000 electric guitars going off at once.
Oh.
And I'm thinking that's going to sound like I'm at the airport standing way too close to a jet as it runs me over. I don't know that... when people get these ideas about what something good is, they just think of something that's okay and make it bigger. When Tom Cruise gets an award from Scientology, they get like a normal size medallion, and then they blow it up so that it's so big it's like dragging his head down on the ground because it's just too big. Flava Flav is telling him tone it down. Yeah, that's what it's like. And then he was like, here's how we're going to do the special effects. And I know how to do some special effects, and this is not how you do it. He's like, talking to a guy who's come up with an electromagnetic system where we think you could get a board to actually float about 6 feet off the ground using, super high tech and millions of volts of electricity. We could do this thing. And I'm thinking, oh my God, you're going to kill this guy. To what? Get him 6 inches off the ground in the middle of a soundstage somewhere? When, I don't know, green screen would work perfectly fine and is a lot less likely to kill you. They didn't seem to know what the hell they were doing. And eventually Xanadu, they decided to do Xanadu first and see if they could really get these special effects down. And nobody went to see Xanadu. So that was the end of Olivia Newton-John and the Silver Surfer.
Going back to the Tarantino thing real quick, interesting little piece of trivia though. Silver Surfer has showed up in exactly one live action film, and you know who voiced him? Lawrence Fishburne. So
that was the Doug Jones.
Fantastic Four. Doug Jones did his mocap, and Fishburne did his now,
voice. If I recall, talking about the Silver Surfer has also ended up in a film. It was a submarine movie that was punched up by Quentin Tarantino, so he slipped in some comic book references. Yeah. Silver Surfer is very popular. He showed up in Breathless too. Oh, back to Quentin Tarantino. I think they actually asked him to do Iron Man, and what happened is they called in all these writers like, we want to do Iron Man. Let's hear your ideas. And he threw out a bunch of ideas, and they said, thank you, we'll call you. And they never called. Apparently, they just did this with everyone. Have I mentioned how scummy these people are? This is how they get their stuff. They call in all these writers, they get a bunch of ideas, and then they're writing them all down, and they hire someone for nothing and give them all these ideas. They're the worst. Finally, Quentin was famous enough that they came crawling to him, and they offered him Green Lantern, and he said, screw you and the dog you rode in on, and that was one of his best career choices ever. I will give any Quentin Tarantino project an automatic 3 ice cream cones, and if we've got comic book characters attached to it, that gets another one. So all of these would have been great, and we're never going to get to see any of them. We're also not going to get to see John Carpenter's Firestarter. This one, This one came about as close as you can get, because we did get Firestarter. The only part we didn't get was the John Carpenter bit. Mm-hmm. He was signed on to do it. They had Drew Barrymore as Charlie, the Firestarter, because who else would they get? You know, she was the right age and popular, and she was good at it. Richard Dreyfuss was going to play her dad. And they were, they had a pretty decent sized budget. And then The Thing came out. The budget was supposed to be, the budget for Firestarter was going to be $27 million. This is not supposed to be a low budget film. It's a Firestarter, for God's sakes. And The Thing came out, and it's hard for people to realize today just how badly The Thing bombed. You know, people went to the theaters just to not go see The Thing. It just unbelievable. I was there opening night, and that's one of these movies that broke my heart again, because I was loving it, and I could tell the audience was not as into it as I was, and there wasn't many of them. This was the year of E.T. That's the kind of extraterrestrial we wanted, apparently. So they went to Carpenter and they said, we're cutting the budget from 27 to 15. And Carpenter said, you know, I can walk away from this and you still have to pay me. And that's what he did. He had a payer play. Before The Thing, he had enough oomph with the industry that he could actually have this pay or play thing. And when they decided to renege on the agreed to budget, he was able to walk away and got himself like an airplane out of it. So we did not get John Carpenter's obviously superior version of Firestarter. But again, we did get Christine. And that's the thing. He went and you know, now they had this hole in his time. He went and did Christine. So we probably wouldn't have gotten a really good Stephen King adaptation if it hadn't been for them screwing him on what ended up being a bad one. But I still think Firestarter had a lot of potential. They've tried it twice and they've screwed it up both times, and that's about as many times as you should be allowed to do it. But for whatever reason, they can't seem to crack what made the Firestarter a pretty good little novel. It wasn't one of King's best, but it was very likable. Mm-hmm. It has a terrible ending. And I know Stephen King and terrible endings is a shocker, but it's one of his worst endings. Literally, the end. Just spoiler alert: the ending of the novel of Firestarter is that we got this big conspiracy and everything, and how is this little girl going to protect herself? How is the truth going to get out? She goes to Rolling Stone. That's the ending of it. She's walking through the doors of Rolling Stone, and Jan Wenner is going to crack this, and by God, those people are going to pay because, you know, you can keep your Washington Post and New York Times. She's going to Rolling Stone. Like, Stephen, you are such a hippie. You really are.
I distinctly remember reading that too, and I was like, "What? Huh?"
Yeah. I think we're supposed to feel good. Oh, thank God, Rolling Stone. Woo. Yeah, 4 stars to 4 ice cream cones. Okay, so my favorite director, no secret, Mario Bava. Master of color, master of darkness and light. Just, great stuff. So influential. If you saw Crimson Peak, you saw a love letter to Mario Bava. And I love everything Mario Bava did. Every single thing he did, except for Dr. Goldfoot and the Bikini. It's terrible. It's terrible. Look, he was Italian. And he spoke Italian. He didn't speak English. And they drag him to America and make him do this Vincent Price comedy. It wasn't funny. What chance did it have to be funny when the director doesn't even know what the jokes are? And God bless him, the jokes weren't good, so it wouldn't have mattered anyway. I just don't think that was his gift. Comedy was not necessarily his gift. So we should probably be grateful that when King Kong was being produced, there were plans to make Baby Kong, directed by Mario Bava. And all we have is this poster and a script. And I've read the script because I am a Bava completist. I will watch.
Wait, that's the poster? Was that really a thing, or you just like one you threw together?
I would love to say that I threw this together. And in fact, it does look like something that really low generation AI, like the AI you get when you can't afford Midjourney, like you go for the free ones. Yeah, it really does look like, no, this was an actual poster from the mid-70s.
Oh, Jesus.
This was to get interest for this film. It's about a little boy who finds a baby Kong. And so it's kind of a heartwarming story about a child and a large overgrown beast, except that the beast kills a lot of people. And then he dies horribly in the end. And I'm like reading this, and it's like, these are supposed to be jokes, but they're not funny, and there's lots of death, and what the hell? So fortunately, Dino De Laurentiis' movie did not make enough money that they could do some cheap, jack, awful thing. One of the greatest books ever written about a filmmaker, probably the best, is Tim Lucas's Mario Bava, All the Colors of the Night. And even he, who is the greatest Mario Bava fan of all time, I am just a speck compared to the love that Tim Lucas has for Mario Bava. Even he cannot work up any level of enthusiasm for this project. And although one of the tragedies of Bava is that I wish we had more films of his, especially toward the end, we are all grateful that this did not happen. So, yeah, bullet dodged. Hey, did I mention that Guillermo del Toro really likes to announce a lot of things that never get made? But I can't blame him for this one, because At the Mountains of Madness came real close. He the man's a visionary, and he managed to put together a project that would have been, and this sounds a whole lot scarier now than it did a few years ago, a $200 million horror movie. Which sounds crazy, but now every time I see something that, Disney puts out and what it cost and what we get, I'm like, yeah, I guess $200 million ain't what it used to be. I mean, this one, you could see the money on every frame. That's a mutated penguin. That's Ron Perlman. It's easy to mistake the two, but yeah. Ron Perlman was going to be in it and possibly not be the scariest thing in there. And Tom Cruise. Look, I joke about Tom Cruise because he deserves it. He's a nut. But he is a nut who is very, very good at picking his projects. When you hear Tom Cruise made a science fiction movie, you're like, oh, that's going to suck. And then like, oh, wow, actually, that was pretty good. Yeah, okay, The Mummy, we'll give him that. That one did not work out well. But for the most part, a Tom Cruise film is probably going to be good, even if he's hopelessly miscast. Oh, Jack Reacher's 6'7" and built like an Olympic god? Yeah, we're going to put Tom Cruise in there. We'll just have him stand on boxes and everybody else has to stand in a ditch. It'll work. But it's still a good movie. That's what's frustrating. It's a good movie. You want to hate it because he's so miscast, but it's a good movie. So he was going to be in this. They were going to show Cthulhu. Finally, after this creature being in the zeitgeist, everyone knows what he is, but no one makes movies about him. Little bits and pieces, but not the whole thing. Finally, we even have some behind the scenes, some footage, some sample footage. So check this out. Yeah. Huh?
Oh, man.
Huh?
Nice.
Yeah,
I do, I would have loved to have seen this movie, but also I don't think I've ever seen that concept art of Cthulhu before, and if that was what he was going to look like, I'm kind of glad it didn't get made.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Now, here's part of the thing is, I probably should have had this at the beginning. I cannot 100% vouch for the veracity of almost anything I say. For most of it,
not just in this presentation. Just in general.
Just in general. Really, I am an unreliable narrator. All of these things that I have, I believe, are actual pre-production art and everything. But there's so many people out there that just do this and throw it out there and just put little, oh, this is a sample footage and everything. And I don't know. Sometimes it's like I love to post pictures on Facebook of demons and stuff, and they're like, who did this? Like, I don't have the faintest idea. Somehow it's gotten on Pinterest, and once it gets on Pinterest, it's released by 1,000 people, all of whom take credit for it. So who knows? I don't know. Cthulhu did show up in the script that I read, which was okay. It wasn't great, but again, an okay script that's going to be directed by Guillermo del Toro, I suspect is going to become better than okay in the finished project. There's a lot that people will bring to this. So I'm giving it only 3. They canned it because they said there's no way that an R-rated movie, and this would be R-rated, you can't make a $200 million R-rated movie. Then Deadpool came out and blew away all their expectations. And now, it seems more feasible. But time has passed, and I don't know. It seems to have been put on the back burner. Every now and then they talk about bringing it back, and I don't know. when momentum is lost in a film project, it's well and truly lost. We also could have had Guillermo del Toro doing Pet Sematary.
Oh.
Yeah. I would like to see how that turned out. They did a remake of it, so I'm pretty sure this project's dead in the water. They're not going to do it again. And as far as the remake goes, I mean, it had some twists and turns that would have been genuinely shocking if they weren't on the poster and trailer. But I don't know. Crazy talk from Bill Mulligan once again. Who pays attention to that? Then he was going to do the Sand Kings. Now, is anyone else familiar with this story? Because I was not.
No.
I'm not familiar with the story, but I can tell you that this did get made at one point.
It did. It was. I'm trying to remember if
it was the first. I believe the very first episode of the Outer Limits '90s version.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's a really cool premise that this guy is given this gift of these creatures called Sand Kings. They are intelligent insect creatures in terrariums that build cities and wage wars against each other, and you can watch them, and you're watching these civilizations grow, and as long as you feed them and take care of them, they even start like erecting statues to you because you're their deity. And this guy is given this, and he's completely irresponsible for it and forces them to fight against each other, and eventually they get tired of his shit. It's a really, really cool premise. It's a really cool premise. And I would love to see what he was going to do with that.
That's like the Sea Monkeys episode of South Park.
Yeah, yes, yeah. I'll bet any amount of money that they read Sand Kings because, yes,
Yeah.
it's very much like that.
That's great.
It's just a neat idea. They've been trying to make Sandman and Death into movies forever, and Neil Gaiman just has one horror story after another about how they totally didn't understand anything about what he was doing. And the closest they probably came was that George R. R. Martin was attached to the standalone Death, the High Cost of Living, which was a really nice one. But now we've got, a pretty good adaptation of Sandman on Netflix. I'm a little conflicted about it because I think they did a good job. And I realized that, honestly, there's a lot of things that are just better the way in the format that they were. Sandman was a great comic book. It would have made a pretty good animated show. And it's an okay live action. Even though there's nothing wrong with it. They did everything right. The casting's good. Everything about it's good. You just realize, you really lose a lot when you go from one format to another. It was made for comics. It's a good comic. And when you try to do it live action where you're limited by the actual physicality of three-dimensional living, breathing humans, there's a lot you lose. And you don't realize how much of it you lose until you see it. It becomes really just excellent cosplay. So, I don't know. I wish they'd gone animated. Hey, he was also going to do Halo. That was a big thing for a while. Boy, they were trying to make a Halo movie. And for whatever reason, just didn't go. And then there's one that really kind of ticks me off because they did it and they did it badly. Haunted Mansion. He loves the Haunted Mansion. He is a fanatic. He thinks of the Haunted Mansion the way I do Mario Bava. He was going to do it right. And they decided to go in a different direction. And then they just remade it again. Another, it's been 5 years and it's time to reboot the Haunted Mansion. Did that really set the place on fire the first time that they had to do it again? Disney is just creatively bankrupt. I can't take anymore. Hey, how about this one though? Peter Pan. Boy, if there's one project I don't want to see, it's another Peter Pan movie. If there's two, it would be Peter Pan and Tarzan. Everything that's been done has been done. Or has it? Because Del Toro was going to do a modern version where Hook is the good guy, a former detective trying to track down a child killer version of Peter Pan.
Wow.
What? Yes, I would go see that. Now, I have a feeling I'd be in a lonely theater. I don't think this has any profit ability on it at all, but I love the idea. And then there's one I really just would genuinely like to see done. I think it's time for a remake of Fantastic Voyage, and Del Toro would be an excellent person to do it. It's a fun movie as it is, but it's very dated. And it would be really cool to see a remake of that. I think that'd be great. That gets 4 ice cream cones right there.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to part 1 of Bill's Unseen Horrors, films that were never made. Stay tuned and we will have part 2 in a few days. And we will be back next week with another episode of Q-Tips.